Right, okay, so over here, and as you can see, looking really nice. You can probably see how glossy this actually is. So this is that primer coat, but it doesn't come without a few little things. So to be honest with you, I had a small little ripple just in the front here of this one. I think what it is, I handled it, put a fingerprint in here. The paint was somewhat still soft, so notice that. So we've sanded to get rid of all of that. And to be honest, the panel line rescribing around here was a little bit off. So we've popped those back in as well. And then down in here, there's a panel line that needs to come across. And I'll be honest with you, I thought, oh, 2-second job anyway. I fudged it. So I had to sand it back and I've popped that panel line back in there. And you can probably see the one that's a little bit better on the other side. So those are all in there now. The big thing is over on the other side, we've gone through the masking. Now, again, this is one of these things when you look at it, depending on which aircraft, they all seem to be a little bit different. And obviously a lot of the photos are black and white, which is somewhat of a problem to see detail into this. So I've used a little bit of an average of what I could see. So we got this lip system round underneath here. So it comes around and it comes around the bottom. The instructions all call out for it to go this way. But the reality is most of them, it sort of fades off. But I'm going to play it by the book as it shows. It has this leading little lip right the way round that basically then just fades off before it gets to the tip. It seems to be how all the early ones were done, so forth and so on. The later camo schemes, it all slightly went out the window, and obviously eventually when it went from being low altitude, high altitude and all the rest of it, full wraparound camo, so forth and so on. But anyway, that's that one. Round on the front here, it's just a little bit of a thing of trying to work out how the instructions show it and then how it actually is. So this line is a straight line from here to over here. So, but you've got a three-dimensional curve all in here. So you've sort of roughly come along. The easiest way to do, as I did, is get this line in first and then just down. Then we put the stage in the middle to go across. And again, just off of this edge, so this leading edge has nicely got all of this curve right the way in. Same goes for the tail. So the tail has got one that goes up, it wraps around the back end of it, and I just use one piece and loop round and put it in like it. We've got a couple of little bits here. This is purely to stop it getting scratched on the bottom when it's lying on the deck, so forth, okay? The big thing is obviously the intakes. Now the intakes themselves, we spoke about this during the actual process of putting this together, of coming in, and in theory, what you could do, and it's one of those where I should have done it really, but there we go. If you'd pre-painted this in green, or you pre-painted obviously in grey, depending port and style, but it seems to be, then you had masked it up. You could have then put it all in there and just literally forgotten about it for the entire build. Just being honest, I thought I knew better. Probably don't. I think this is probably the easiest way. So if I was to be doing this now, I would literally, as before we sandwich these two halves together and all the rest of it, I would actually get that grey section into it. Obviously you've got seams and stuff to come in, but you could always get in there and do that by hand afterwards. As long as the baseline at the back is all in position, you'll be absolutely fine. So really, this is the line we're talking about, is this yellow line just down in here. That's the important one. So everything forward of that line is going to be the camo colour. So depending on the port side, I think it's grey. Is it? I don't remember which way around it is now. Yeah, port side is grey, starboard is in the green side. So it's only one colour, you've got to do anything, so it might be easier to put that line in, get it in place first, and then do it. What we've done, or I've tried to do, is I tried to make templates, didn't really work. What we've ended up doing is, if you can see it down in here, we've got a little bit of foam. So this is high density foam that I've literally taken one of these, put it over the top, cut all the way around it, a little bit of trimming, and then we've put it in there. Now this is quite thick. So it's thicker than these are. So it should still be in front, stepped off. It's about twice the thickness of the actual one of these. Because originally I was going to put those in there. But no, we've put these in. So we've got both of these in each side. And then I'm hopeful that it'll be just about what we need in there. We might have to go in there by hand and just tidy up a little bits and pieces, but I'm pretty sure we'll get away with that one. So with that masked up in there like that, obviously the front lines, we're happy, this is all in. This bottom part's going to be black, so we're not too worried about that. It's really just the grey sections on the top we need to take care of and make sure we're all in, all right? So again, how are we going to go about doing the paint work? To be honest with you, I always start lightest coat first for camo work. So in this case, obviously it's the grey. The green will cover the grey a lot easier than it would do the other way round. Again, you could come in freehand, you could do it, you can buy masks for this one and all the rest of it. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take kudos from here, And because it's a hard edge camo on these, we often talk about hard edge and soft edge camo, okay, or faded edge camo. The difference between them is that literally the edge of that. If it's hard edge camo, you could literally make tape and then stick it on and spray right up to it, and it is literally a hard edge. If you wanted it to be somewhat softer, so perhaps it's a soft edge camo as in it's been hand sprayed on, then there's no point putting a hard edge down to it because it will look too stark, okay? So you can do things like worm camo, so to using tack worms to cause a soft edge, get a diffused edge to it, it's a nice soft edge. You could go in freehand, so forth and so on. There's lots of ways around. You could also do a template and then stand it slightly off. Again, so you can use a paper template, stick it over it and put blobs of like white tack or any type of putty on top of it to hold it just a couple of mil above the surface, so you get that slight diffused edge to it as it makes its way round. The easiest camo to do is hard edge because you can literally just put tape down. So you could either walk the lines round and you have thin masking tape and just put them all round, or the easier way we're going to do it, very similar to how we did splinter camo when we did the Aggressor F18 Hornet, is that we will take this, we will blow it up on a scanner to the correct size, we'll break it down into segments, and then all we'll do is we'll get 40mm Tamiya tape and we'll overlap it. And then that way we'll just put 4 lines of this down each wing, it'll have the pattern into it, and then you just peel it off and we're left there with exactly what we want onto this one. Again, and it's hard edge, it's pretty straightforward. The nice thing about using this particular way we're going to do it is we're going to spray all the grey first, is we can weather it as well. So what we'll do is we're going to put the grey pretty much everywhere. Okay, there's a couple of areas we don't have to worry too much about it, but all the areas where the grey is, well, then we're going to come back and we're going to post weather it, we're going to do a little bit of post shading to it, going to mottle it a little bit just to sort of kill it, that sort of solid brick block finish off of it, just to give it a little bit more texture. We'll do all of that to the grey work, then we'll mask it up, then we're going to come in then with obviously with the green, and we can do exactly the same with the green on top of it whilst it's there, because the grey will be masked off and be protected. Then when we unmask it, we can then just go over with a final post shade over the entire thing, and then obviously weathering once it's all unmasked and we can do it together. It's pretty much the easiest and straightforward. And to be honest, I'm talking here and it sounds really complicated. It's not. So just bear with me as we go right the way through. Colours. Okay, it's pretty standard for this one. The grey is a medium C grey, which is your what's that one? 637, I think it is, for medium C grey, or 381C version if you're doing that one. But basically it's the standard medium C grey from World War II. And then it's the dark green, very straightforward. So we're going to use Hataka, weirdly. I've used Hataka on the underside, and I was going to use, I've got them here, AKs, but I like to mix and match, as you know what I'm like with these things. So we're going to use these ones. So for the colours for this particular one, we are going to use C043 for the medium C grey, and we're going to use C143, which is obviously the dark sea grey, dark green, standard ones for those. If you were to be wanting to use these ones, we got these ones down in here, which is RC286 for the green, for the grey it's RC289. Again, we've got them both there. What I might end up doing is some of the mottling effect, I might use the other colours and things like that. Just depends which way we go with this one. But basically we've been around, we're happy, it's got a beautiful finish, it's very nice and glossy almost on this one, so we can go straight in there. We're going to get the grey straight onto this, let it dry somewhat, and then we'll get back in, and then obviously we'll do some post work with it. We'll treat these intakes somewhat separately, so what I'm probably going to do is obviously paint the grey in there, and then obviously we won't weather around too much in there, it's not going to need it, but we can get it in there nice, gentle, build it up so we're not spraying paint down there and covering and getting bleed in and all things like that. So hopefully that'll be a nice way of doing it. When you are masking, before you get going with the paint, just have a final whip round. So just go around and make sure that it hasn't lifted in any areas. So these areas just down in here, obviously the tape can lift, and there's nothing worse that when you're doing it, you come along and then you've noticed you've got some overspray. So before you start spraying, have a final check round to make sure it's all still down firm. The other thing as well is that if you've got areas like this, make sure they don't fold over, because if they fold over like that, you spray them and you haven't. So once you're coming in for this top layer, make sure that they're all free and there's nothing that's wrapped over or been taped in the wrong place and stuff like that. It just saves you a bit of going back later on and doing it. But fear not, we're going to be going backwards and forwards, and because we'll be doing post shading with lighter shades, you can easily do little touch-ups if you spot them. So over to the spray bay, let's get the grey on. Right, okay, so to be honest with you, we've got 2 batches mixed up. I've done this one here is roughly around about a 50-50 mix, so it's quite thick. of the actual grey. And also we've got this one made up as well down in here, which is a lot thinner. This is probably more like 70% thinners to it. The reason for having a thicker and a thinner one is that first one down in there is for doing the intake, because I want to get the intake area done first. And then obviously that's going to be in this area here, and again if it was wet it was likely to seep into the sponge, so forth and so on. So the whole point of doing it this way is to make sure that that doesn't happen. Alright, so moving all the other bits out of the way for a minute, we can just come in here, check our flow. Sounds a little bit thick, hopefully once the compressor finishes, or you'll hear it. But if you listen to it, it sounds like it's just struggling a little bit as we try and spray. So, just sounds a little bit. So that's all right, because for once we want it to sound like that, because we've got to spray this intake and we want it to be nice and dry. Okay, so trying to get in here is a bit tricky to show you guys as well. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to put a coat under here. And we're shortly spraying away. We're not masking the entire underside. So this is just a thinnish coat just underneath here. But the whole idea is because it's a high air pressure as well, it dries, and we've got rapid thinners in here and so forth and so on. So the whole point is this is going to dry quite quickly. And I know this is a right pain because you guys aren't going to be able to see this as much as I was hoping. Okay, so what I'm going to do, I'm just going to turn that down just a little bit on the old air pressure front. I just hold that over here because that is really coming out a little bit too quick. That's a bit more better. Okay, so what we're going to do is nice light coat, and then we're going to stop. You know, so this is all we're going to do. We're just going to go a little bit, and then we'll stop. And again, what we're going to do is just going to do the front and the back edges of the wings. So the whole point of this is literally just to build it up nice and gently, not too strong. And again, taking our time down at the downward angle and the top, then we'll go off somewhere else and so forth. So with this bit down in here, we're just going to backfill this area just to fill this back in, just to sort of fix that little area. And the same with this one as we did here, just to give a bit in there so it just blends all that together. Okay, so what we're going to do, we're going to hit the extractor and we're going to get it round pretty much everywhere else. So we've got our instructions here, going to be showing where we're going. So I think to start with, we'll start at the front and we'll just do these areas. So we're going to do pretty much all the front end. Just to start with, and again we can do we'll be picking this out and doing all the camo afterwards. And then just do under here. Again, whilst we're here, another light coat. It's nice, okay, and then obviously we can just work our way around everywhere else. So again, I'm just having to make sure front pito's all done. And what we'll do is we're going to switch now, once we've done the back tail, just off to the thinner paint for the rest of it. so what we can do now, we're just going to mix in our little one we've done here. So again, good mix into the colour cup. Should get 2 lots out of this, which is really all we should need. So we just mix the slightly thicker stuff in with this. It's fine. We're going to put caps and covers on and all the rest of it. Okay, so pretty much spine's going to go there. And again, we're going to do it a little bit like we did the other one. So we're going to pick out these panels to start with, but this time we don't really have to do a dusty coat or anything else like that. This can be pretty much straight into it now. There we go, that's our half and half done. So we'll just dry this back. Just cut it to air. Let's pop that now. Reload. Hands are clean. Grab it underneath. We should be able to grab it in the front in a minute. Okay, so same thing. Okay, so that's all looking pretty darn good. Happy with how that's all going, to be honest. So we're just gonna small coat just down here on the tail. A quick look in that intake. I think what we'll do, we'll stop there, because we've got to get underneath here as well and do this other edge, just to put that one in, because to be honest I've got to do that one, but I need to flip it over to be able to do it. So I'm just going to let this dry for around about 10 minutes. We'll flip it over, I'll quickly run that bead in, and then what we'll do is we'll come back and we're going to put the sort of mottling onto the top of this as well, so we can go through all the motions of getting all of that in. So that'll be very much similar to how we did the bottom. We're going to lighten it slightly, and we're just going to go centres of panels, things like that, and generally just mottle it up a bit. Okay, so there we go. We have one very nice looking Vulcan, very grey. We've done the edges. Happy with that intake. Hopefully one of the cameras can sort of see it. Looks pretty good, to be honest. The moment of truth will be when we unmask it, but I'm going to leave that to later. Okay, so what we want to do now is basically what we did before on the underside, so we're going to lighten it. So we've got a little bit of paint down in here. We're going to add a little bit more thinners into this. So whatever you've got, thin it 50-50 again, and then we're going to give it a drop of the Insignia white. So this is that creamy white colour. So it's a little bit like adding buff, if you like, to it. But we just want to fade it just a little bit. So again, and we're not adding tons, just a few drops into this. And then hopefully this will give us a nice off shade. And because it's thin, like we said before, like with the underside, it's not going to be like painting it. It's going to take so much to get this off. The easiest way is just look at your bristles. If your bristles of your brush come straight through, you know it's very, very thin. Okay, so we should be good in here. So we'll just tip this into hot. We're not going to need tons of it, so I'm going to keep a little bit just off camera. We will put the cover on. Alright, and then check our flow. Okay, same thing. We want to turn it down a little bit and maybe lock your trigger off so you can't over pull, because we just need a little bit. But you need a higher air pressure just to blur the lines of it all, if you like. Alright. So again, we're not going to do the intakes, and I've been sticking my fingers in the inside of this. So again, what we're going to do is just going to mottle up a little bit. So we're going to go everywhere because we're not sure where the pattern is, so we're just going to do everything. So again, we're just going to sort of circular motions, middles of panels, and we're not going to do every one, so very similar to how we did last time, a little bit of fading on the outsides, on the ailerons, on the flaps like we did before. So literally it is just repeating what we did the first time. And again, not every single line, not every single bar gets it, and again hopefully it will just blot some of this out. But again, we're not trying to go massively over absolutely everything. Just going in. And the worst thing you can be with doing this type of work is neat, because the trouble is you're trying to recreate something that is like a haphazard random way of things working. So you know, you need to sort of go around, but I don't know how well that's going to start to show, but hopefully it's coming through, because it is an overall effect. It's not something you were trying to make stand out. It should be something that you sort of, your eye sort of just can't work out quite what's going on, but you know, there's no reason for it. It's just maybe it's just there. And again, we're just going to work all this in. Still same as we did before. And we're not going to worry about wrapping it round the front and things like that. It is literally just be very haphazard here, there and everywhere. And most of this, don't forget, it's going to be green. So, and if you wanted to, you know, you can literally, like I'm doing it in one pass, but if you did, you could sort of come in here and, you know, you could literally do a lighter coat and then obviously a little bit of a darker coat and break it all up and things like that. But it's just one of these things where it's just having fun, spraying it around, and to be a good, you know, it's actually a good little exercise and trigger. Because it doesn't matter if you get it wrong. No one's going to have a go at you if you put this slightly wrong or whatever. But again, squiggly shapes, straight lines, you know, just try and randomise it and keep it a little bit different as you make your way around. I'm just going to turn on one of the extractors just to keep the air moving. And the nice thing with this, like everything, there's no right or wrong. You know, you're just placing this on, going round. But to be honest, you could use this grey colour that we're doing now for the underside. If you wanted to start your weathering into that, you could literally turn around and go, do you know what? You could use this nice faint grey over the actual white coat, because it won't show through too much. And there we go, we are just out of paint. So this will be one of those ones where I don't really know how much you're going to be able to see on camera. I can see it, but as I say, not too sure. There's my finger holes, there we go. How much it actually shows. But you're just trying to break that in. So that's a good place to stop. To be honest, we don't want to go massively over the top. It's an effect after all. Alright, so what we're going to do, we're going to stop there. We're going to let this dry off completely overnight. And then what we're going to do tomorrow is come back in and we're going to do all the green camo work onto this one and then blend all that in. And then what we'll do is once the green work's been on and faded in the same way, then we're going to put sort of a neutral coat right the way over it, a very thin coat of something. It may be buff, it might be grey, you know, who knows, I haven't made my mind up yet. But what that'll do is then it'll neutralise all the weathering and make it all sort of universal right the way through, because it would be fading back at the same rate unless it's had touch-ups and various things to it, but that's something you could put on as a little bit of extra weathering. Once that's done though and all in, then we're going to go around and remask it. So we've got to do the tail in black, we've got to do around the front end, so forth and so on. We've got some different markings and various things we're going to put on and do this one. We've got to paint up the actual engine exhaust, things like that, then we can get those in, and not forgetting of course to do the speed brakes, which weirdly on this one fall right where there's a camo line, which is a bit of a pain. But again, would you notice it if you didn't have them? Probably not. But again, that's something you can think about as you've got that paint out. Again, you'd nothing worse when you've got to go back and start getting paint in different colours and that. But there we go, that's done, looking very much the part like that. We'll come back tomorrow, get it masked up. It's all dry now as well, so that's good. And then what we can do is think about unmasking it and seeing exactly how she's looking.